I'm missing the intro though. Where was my intro? My name is Odette, and this is Tess, aka the Naked Witch.
Okay, yeah. So we're here at the lakefront on the Malecon in Mexico in a really cute park. I'm here with Odette, and she is this amazing teacher of many things, honestly, of language, of yoga, of spirituality, of high consciousness. And she has just been an amazing friend and support to me over the years. And every time we have a conversation, I am so disappointed that it was not recorded, because I feel like it offers so much rich and juicy wisdom that it's a shame that it's not able to be captured and then shared. So that's what we've done today. We've made this really nice attempt to do that in our nice, beautiful, authentic and amateur style. And I'm just really grateful to be sitting here with you, Odette. Thank you so much for your time and grace and love.
I love you. I love you. I really hope you put this out, or parts of it. Doesn't matter. It was really beautiful, very authentic, and very real.
I wanted to say from where we left off last is that because we had dropped the M word. And yours and our relatable childhoods and indoctrinations through the Mormon religion, and I feel like maybe you relate to this. I feel like this is where we find really common ground, perhaps, is this back to adopting this imposed Christ-like way of being, and that it really creates this massive gap between who you are as a human and what we're all aspiring to be. And religion in general, not just the Mormon one even, it all has this tendency to have some superiority within the organization, telling everyone how they're supposed to and not supposed to be acting, thinking, or feeling. And it really creates this massive gap within, like an internal gap within yourself and your own humanity. And shame is the first go-to the moment that you're experiencing that fragmentation. And then that's the more that you exile all these aspects of yourself that are completely natural, but because they're deemed sinful, evil, or associated with the devil or the darkness, then it leaves an individual very confused, because you can't control your human nature. You can only learn to navigate it and be with it. And I feel like that's maybe what occurs in this more new age movement. Oh, there's a bumblebee on my finger. Ow. Um, I love bumblebees when they land on me. Look at that. It's not a flower, it's a microphone. But I guess I see this, maybe people who have not experienced a lot of spirituality in their lives, and then they come to find this access point of God, and they have this awakening, and they then are they're not aware of this spiritual bypassing occurrence that happens. And so they're going immediately to all the parts of themselves that they never accessed before due to the lack of spirituality, which are all these high, we'll call them high vibes, and like a level of love and a level of peace that it's never been understood before. And so in a desire to maintain that, and then they go into this state of rejecting and denying all other parts, instead of realizing, like, no guys, that's what we've been doing for millennia, and we've already ran the gamut. We know what the cause and effect of that ambition is, or that desire to eradicate all the darkness, and it leaves us totally disenfranchised from ourselves of what we actually are, which is not which is the duality, which is both the dark and the light. And when you go into this place of saying there's only like I'm only the light, it really, it's just so ostracizing for, and it doesn't allow anyone else to show up authentically.
Exactly. Which is, in order for us to have access to our higher selves, we have to access our own authenticity, who we truly are. And if we're not doing that, we're missing the point of what we're trying to do. Yeah. And I think compassion and grace for the person that's trying to figure it out, because we're literally walking in the dark. I mean, if you're in this game, most likely it's beautiful when you access knowledge and teachers that can be a guiding light. At the end of the day, your experience is so unique. A lot of it is going to be self-taught, I believe.
Self-discovered.
Self-discovered, yes.
Yeah.
Because you can read about I don't know, a method or a tool. Most people, to speak about an average person, doesn't have access to a teacher. So a lot of the times you have to teach yourself how to use the tool and make it your own, which I encourage people to make stuff their own, because what works for me might not work for you. And I don't believe in one size fits all either.
Yeah, I was actually just having a thought walking over here to meet you, which is I I would love to be better at quoting individuals who have said very profound things, or quoting teachers who have made profound impact. And then there's a part of me that's also really happy that overall I kind of just let everything wash over me, and I can't really distinguish it from one or another, where it came from. It's just whatever kind of sticks and resonates and then comes through me in my own interpretation of whatever that was from someone else, gleaning from someone else's insight, allows me to be, allows me to really trust that there's something I picked up on, and that that it's that it's not going by the book on anything, like a book, and that it's kind of just taking a nice, yeah, like a nice swath over everything, and then whatever kind of sticks and comes through, then that's designed for my, or like that's my authentic self able to express.
I agree.
Knowing that, of course, I have influence from many other sources, but
Absolutely, because nothing is ingenious. So none of what I'm saying originally came from me. The way I'm saying it does. Yet if there's a particular quote that I like word by word, I'm going to say that someone else stated in the past, I think that's lovely when you can quote that and say who shared it. Yet there's beauty in information being coming through you as a vessel, because it's your own signature. Yet everything I'm talking about, I did not make it up. It's not an original thought. I highly doubt it. Maybe just a few things, maybe only 5% of what I say. Everything else is influence. And I do believe in the influence of quoting people whenever stating an exact, I don't know, thought from somebody else.
Exactly, a precise teaching.
Yeah, a precise
that's been patented and trademarked. Do your best to quote.
Yeah.
Reference that, motherfucker.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I wanna, there's something I'm trying to get at with all of this, which is this this still, maybe I have a little bit of resent left from how this endeavor to be perfect in God's eyes, or in like this love and light level or context, was the precise thing that was used to gaslight me and teach me how to gaslight myself, and made it impossible for me to feel anything that I was feeling without a judgment of that emotion if it wasn't just completely considered pure or considered coming from a place of love and kindness. Like if there was any malice in a natural reaction I was having, or resent or fear or sadness, I was taught to judge that in an attempt to teach me to eradicate it or transcend it to be more Christ-like, is what the endeavor was. So it wasn't a malicious teaching either. It was coming from a place that my parents and the church just wanted to help everyone be better people.
Yeah.
But it was ultimately, it results in people not people completely cutting themselves off from their somatic experience and their emotional experience, and we're just emotionally numbing. And I feel like that's like the biggest thing in religion as well, is this, like like drugs and alcohol are outcasted, but in the Mormon religion everyone's obese. Not everyone, but they find some other means of numbing. And that's like really common as well, or they numb through like achievement and like workaholism and all these other aspects that are not just honoring our little human selves of what we are.
Yeah, I think to encapsulate what you said right now is how they teach us how to set aside our humanness or dissociate from our humanness. And I believe that the knowledge that they teach is very beautiful, yet it's how they teach it. It's the leaders, it's how they teach it. It could be easily misinterpreted. I believe in alchemy, and I can use the same scriptures from the Mormon religion um, to create alchemy with my emotions. The thing is that that's not how they teach it, and I believe that's because most of humanity, there's a bigger problem. Most of humanity right now is not in touch with their deeper selves, and we're having leaders in Mormon churches or other churches that can't teach these same verses or teachings and apply them at an emotional level, which we can. Which we can. The way that people are teaching, we need leaders, we need teachers that have actually gone through the stuff. I believe. I really truly believe, for me, the type of teacher needs to be embodied. I do not care how much knowledge you have. I care about how much wisdom you have. And when you're so in touch with your intuition and you're so in touch with the deeper parts of yourself, it's very easy to tell from me when someone's only speaking from here and not from here. And that could be very helpful. That could be very helpful because knowledge is very helpful. Yet, there, there's nothing like teaching from an embodied level, and that is what Christ consciousness is. It's not about everything he said, it's about the things that he was doing, and the things that he was doing spoke for themselves more than his words. And we can tie that to, what is it, 90, we're 95% or 90% nonverbal. So even going to that and realizing we understand much better, even if it's at an unconscious level, through energy, leading through example. These are old teachings. This is nothing new. Yet there's a lack. There's a lack of that. And I believe, I'll say it again, knowledge in the wrong hands can create more harm than benefit. So I believe right now it's time for leaders, Mormon teachers, or in whatever religions or in spirituality, to be embodied, to be embodied. And if you've actually been through, for example, emotional neglect, I would go to a teacher that has been through emotional neglect. So this teacher can teach me how to overcome that or how to navigate that. I'm not going to go with the person that has lived a high vibe life only. Because what are you going to teach me? I
mm,
can't relate to you. Have no idea what I'm talking about.
mm, mm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I feel like everything that you're saying is just encapsulated in the word empathy. That, like, an empathy on an energetic level, like you said, like that, the 90% of nonverbal, you can experience empathy
Mm-hmm.
from someone who is not even communicating it when it's just space being held for you to be seen and heard and validated,
Mm-hmm.
and that empathy is only accessible potentially when you can experience empathy for yourself first and foremost, and you no longer are rejecting multiple aspects of yourself, and instead you're it's such a meta concept to have empathy for yourself because you're you're having to observe these aspects of who you are while desiring to truly understand them and to validate them and to honor them and to not outcast parts that, like, the parts that are really uncomfortable, or the parts that feel like we have no control over, or the parts that get us into trouble out in the real world and that don't serve us or serve our our image, or things that maybe are mm, socially desirable or celebrated, and instead, but when you can offer someone, like, you don't even have to be a teacher, you just need to be a human being that can just sit there and be like, shit, I get it, like, not, I don't even get it, but I can really relate to what kind of emotion you'd be experiencing right now, and
Mm-hmm.
don't change it. Don't feel like you're having the wrong feeling at the wrong time about the thing that you're trying to resolve, and instead you're actually, whatever you're feeling is exactly right.
It's a normal reaction.
And only can you truly understand what that normal reaction is if you take the time to really understand your belief systems and your narratives that are perpetuating the emotion. And and again, that, like, leaves this big wide open space for judgment. Well, oh, okay, you misinterpreted that, and so of course you're feeling sorry for yourself, and that's, like, incorrect. Where, rather than unpacking it even deeper and recognizing, oh no, you have this adopted belief system due to something much deeper that was perhaps maladapted, but for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you can kind of break that spell and know that having so much compassion for whatever reason
Mm-hmm.
you're having an emotion over something due to some narrative that doesn't serve you necessarily,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but you still have to go through, like you were saying before, like, don't skip any steps, and
Mm-hmm.
and give yourself that time to understand yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
by doing that, that is the practice of learning empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're actually taking that time, you actually are really instilling that desire to understand what is truly under all the layers.
Yeah. Wow. Beautifully said. um, Empathy, the capacity for empathy, you need to have capacity for empathy if you really want to create alchemy, period. And if you really want to start the practice of empathy as a person that probably has never experienced empathy or has a hard time or can't even relate, doesn't even know what empathy is, for me, something that I wish somebody had told me 10 years ago was how easily you become your own oppressor. And if you're working from that space, even with all of these tools and all of this knowledge, if you can't access empathy, compassion, you're literally, what is it? What is that saying? Same shit, different toilet. So have to, you have to work on your inner dialogue first and foremost.
Mm.
If you don't work on that, if you don't have an inner dialogue that is compassionate and empathetic, you're using all of these tools to create more suffering, if not worse. Like you're just making it worse on yourself because now you're thinking, now I know better, but I can't act any better or I don't feel any less shittier. So that part of being able to access this compassionate and empathetic dialogue before even putting into practice tools, that would be ideal. And realistically, I also want to say that it's very beautiful to have everything clear at a concept level, but it's really in when you're in it to practice. And that takes time. It takes time and it takes love and it takes a lot of trial and error. And you can pick up on 3 tools only and change your life completely if you learn how to embody them. And one of them is for me loving kindness for sure. Loving kindness because as the Buddha said when he sent the monks into this forest where it's dark and it's scary, and the monks come back. If you access love and kindness in the midst of the darkness, that is the medicine. So you don't run away from the darkness. You don't get out of the forest. You're there in loving kindness, and you become the light. And whatever is around you, it's going back to what we were sharing about Christ. Who was he with? Right? Who was he with? So it really starts with yourself. And also, it's really nice when you have amazing friends to remind you of that because we can easily forget. We're so indoctrinated ourselves. We're so conditioned, our programming. And when we have people that are actually living, walking the walk outside of us, it's a nice reminder. And environment is everything. I do want to mention that because all of this sounds fantastic, yet if you're in a very toxic environment, it is fucking hard. And realistically speaking, it is fucking hard.
Almost impossible.
Almost impossible.
Almost
Yeah,
impossible.
almost impossible. So
you just see through the weeds.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I feel like that. Well, there's a couple of things from what you said, like starting with the the high our high propensity to be in denial about our toxic environments, about our toxic aspects of ourselves, our toxic thinking, our toxic coping mechanisms, our toxic, like just to be in denial, especially because many toxic traits are rewarding on many levels and they serve us and they get us things that we want, and we are in denial of what the true cost of that is and how we're undermining aspects of ourselves, one undermining someone else to maybe be manipulative and getting our way, um or just like toxic means of coping, and that we don't want to admit to ourselves like this is actually doing more harm than good, whether it be from any side of the spectrum. Like you can be so toxic and in denial of our extreme routines and our practices and our healing endeavors. Like that can be equally as toxic as binge eating on Diet Coke and McDonald's, and or doing like copious amounts of cocaine. Like and both come with heavy walls of denial that we have to get through to feel, to even catch a glimpse of like, oh no, shit, this is I'm like actually ready to address this and start the process of admitting there's a problem there.
100%. First and foremost, everything we do is in the service of survival. So compassion to ourselves and our coping mechanisms, because it's what keeps us alive and feel less threatened. Um, and another thing is, oh man, there's so many levels to this. speaking from different levels of consciousness. First, I do want to say if you're a person that's barely accessing this spiritual scene and it's from a very 3D matter, practices are very important. At the moment you attach to the practice does become your own trap.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter if it's yoga, because for so long I would express, yeah, I am doing the yoga, yet I could acknowledge that I was doing the yoga to run away from my emotions.
Damn.
So when you're at that point,
It's like so mean. Like that's such a mean design in this whole thing. Like
yeah,
just when you, yeah, the irony in it all just catches up every time.
exactly, exactly. That's why when we're speaking, words can get very, very tricky, and everything I say, take with a grain of salt because I know nothing.
No, no shit. No, no
I'm
shit.
only speaking from my experience, and I can also know that most people can't relate. And this is from my experience. People can't relate when I say what comes from the heart can never do anyone any harm, nor yourself, even if we're speaking about morality in the 3D world, matter level, whatnot, is being seen as it, as something wrong. It gets really, really tricky with
Mm,
words because when you can really access your heart and you know something to be true, and this is only if you have a higher level of consciousness. And I'm not talking about hierarchy here.
yeah.
It's just a power that you learn how to access, and you realize that who was the person that turned Jesus in?
Um,
Judas.
Judas,
Judas.
yeah.
Yeah, Judas. Yeah, he had such an important role. And even though at plain sight we can see that as something bad, do we really know? So that's the analogy that I want to use for explaining speed.
Exactly. Oh yeah, yeah. Like exactly the irony in that. Like he's a good example as to like someone to place blame, judgment, and persecution as a traitor, as someone that's betrayed, like
Mm-hmm.
some betrayed someone that's also been so giving and so kind and so
Mm-hmm.
gracious with him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we obviously all want to jump to conclusions that oh that like what a piece of shit. And however, then when you take a real step back, it was like actually was he just like playing his role in the ascension of all of us, and he was actually the scapegoat
Exactly.
and took the fall,
Which is not easy.
which is not easy. And also when we ourselves make ourselves the scapegoat, it's really not easy to even have compassion for ourselves. I'm sure that man died with all kinds of shame if he hadn't if he wasn't able to fully transcend that part of himself before he died. I'm sure Jesus graced him with a lot more wisdom on his way out. And so maybe he did manage to escape like the rest of his life from like self-contempt. And but I totally hear what you're saying. Like who is what are we to say about anything not like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And that's like the negative version of all is divinely created, all is happening for our benefit.
Yes. Yes. I also want to emphasize the importance of this is very high level communication in topics that are very sensitive
Mm,
because whatever I'm saying right now can easily be misinterpreted. And if I speak in regards of from a point of view for the masses, I do think that what I'm saying is not for everyone and not everyone is going to understand.
mm,
And and that's okay. Um, it depends on who's listening because I want to be very realistic as a collective where the world stands. It's important to lead people from a place where realistically I know they're going to understand, you know? They're going to understand. Not saying that I know more or that I have really this higher consciousness. I have a deeper understanding. I do because I've done my homework, and I know I'll continue to learn and expand. And it's important for people to, or it's important for me to use digestible language that most people have access to. Um, and then at the same time, it gets really tricky.
It gets so tricky
Yeah.
because it's also, I feel like what the type of conversation we're having right now is one that would be interesting to someone who is also a soul searcher,
Mm-hmm.
someone who is seeking an understanding of a higher meaning of life and that isn't caught up in the material world as much, but for someone who really values the material world and isn't really interested in anything existential, then I feel like things that you and I are sharing, like you said, could be misinterpreted and trivializing issues that go on in the 3D and in the material world. But when for those that are interested in uh, more, like, what we call it higher consciousness, but that in itself is kind of condescending.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I need to look for something like a different term to
Yeah,
express what I'm
yeah, I
saying.
would like to
Yeah.
look for a different term, but for now we'll just use it. Fuck it. We're also not that high of consciousness,
Yeah.
so we're not making up words today. We're not writing a new Bible.
Yeah.
We're just doing what we're doing with what we have, and and yeah, it really begs for this need to provide so much context
Mm-hmm.
to what about what we're sharing, and that we're not talking about anything involved on a face-to-face level on honestly, like we're not talking about like how do you like, even when it comes to setting goals and like having some high achieving life, and like even that, I feel like we're a bit beyond feeling like that is the priority in this realm,
Mm-hmm.
because we've come to be so obsessed with transcending our humanity in an attempt to create harmony between the heavens and the earth,
Mm-hmm.
and the earth and the heavens require roots to hell in order to have this balance in our humble understanding. I feel like we're kind of on the same
Yeah.
page in those ways, and and when in ways we kind of can be trivializing just the mundane aspects of life
Yeah.
that that are really hard to let go of and are really hard to not really speak to the controversy and the problems and the injustice that go on in the material world, and then and say something so easy like, oh, just let go, and just like, oh, that's your attachment, and instead of recognizing that there's that, like, well, first, everyone has is entitled to their own truth, and some people worship AI, other people are worshiping like cat cartoons or something,
Yeah.
and and
I just learned about this island in Japan where they worship cats. It's
like
interesting.
like they have a whole cat religion.
There's more cats than humans in that little town. They have shrines and
I know
yeah.
a few people who would probably really love to live on that island. That would be their happy place and resting place.
It's a wild. I don't want to say that they worship them, yet they're very important in a religious way. I
Mm.
read an article two days ago. And what's really coming through for me right now, because this is information that I would have liked to hear myself in the beginning of my journey, or as I was finding my truth, is you have to know if you're the type of person with capacity or time or willingness to contemplate. Um, and if you're the person that probably is living a life where you You have no capacity. And what do I mean by capacity is you can't hold a truth that doesn't make any sense to you, or that doesn't feel right, or that doesn't resonate. And that's totally okay. If whatever I'm saying doesn't resonate, like drop it. If you don't have the time to question what I'm saying, please don't listen to me. Another thing, so it was capacity, time, and oh my god, I said another one. It's escaping me. I'll come back to it. Or you're the person that's living a mundane life, which is totally okay if you want to live that mundane life and you want to go 9 to 5 and you want to have the children and you want to be preoccupied with mundane things. It's not better or worse. You just have to know it's very important. If you're that type of person, this information is not for you. If you're that type of person, I would highly suggest to adopt a philosophy or a religion that is in alignment with your values, and you have other people thinking for you because you have no time, or you don't even want to, or you don't have the willingness. That was the third one.
You're an what's it called? NPC? No. Is it a gaming term? Is it called NPC? Non performative character? No, what is it? It's like a gaming term for like all the characters in a video game that are not being
oh yeah, they're automatic.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know what it's called though. You gotta know. You gotta know.
Maybe you just want to be that.
Maybe you just want to be that, and that's okay. Like no judgment, no shame. We're here on Earth anyways. You know, we're gonna go back where we come from, and probably by that time you'll understand, or I'll understand really what I'm trying to understand right now. Probably regret not being human. Human, because I am human, yet you know I get very, truth be told, it is addicting. Spirituality for me is a calling, and whether I'm here to be human or not, it's such a big part of my life. It's just who I am.
It's helping.
It's helping, yeah. So whatever. So going back to that thought is, you have to really be committed if you want to embark on this journey and say, okay, I have the willingness, I have the capacity to hold this truth that does resonate or whatever, and I'll have the time to contemplate and question it, because I'm not only going to believe anything anyone says because it sounds good. Like, no, yeah. No, I think that's where people go wrong. And once you can recognize what type of person you are, maybe it's better for you to follow into one philosophy or one religion that has already been built, that is in alignment with your values, that's going to help you navigate hard times in this world. Yet if you're not that person, if you're the person that wants to seek their own truth and authenticity, then I feel that this information or this conversation can be much more beneficial. Yeah.
Oh, I love that differentiation because I judge the hell out of those people. No, I'm kidding. I don't. I know. I feel the same way as you do, and it's so nice to give everyone permission to be themselves, and I guess what I hear comes through you is just this shift from othering, and that we're not, that there really isn't anything better or worse, and that like all the value that comes with being someone who doesn't want to be, we'll call it a free thinker, and they want to just adopt a systemic way of living, and that it is kind of hard not to be biased to one's own path, and me being biased to thinking, oh, actually it's more beneficial to be a free thinker and a critical thinker, and to do the three things that you just said, like contemplate, take that time to actually
Have the willingness.
Yeah, exactly. And I I'll be the first to admit I don't get a lot done in the day because like in comparison to like productivity or like making material things manifest through my forced effort in this world, because I spend a lot of time doing those three things. Um and that's serving me. And then also it's like, just like every tool, it can be used as a weapon, and you want to just always be keeping that in check, and also be, when you're not doing any critical thinking and not having any self-awareness in a mundane lifestyle, one day that might come to find you searching for something else.
Or it might not. You know, it might not. That's why I believe it's very important to recognize not everyone is built, or not everyone is meant, or not everybody wants to build a company, you know, or be a business owner. Sometimes we think that's cooler. I would say that is not. That is a lot more work. I think it's much more easier to live a systematic life and say, okay, I'm going to adopt this philosophy. It's aligned with my values. I have no issues with it. I'm happy with it. Why would I want to go and pave my own path if this path has been paved and I just want to walk happily, you know? Like, and if you're that person, amazing.
Really
If you're that person,
I just tripped walking down someone else's
because that probably isn't your truth. And can we, instead of wanting somebody else's truth, can we find our own and be like, actually, yes, I'm doing a hell lot of more work over here, because being a free thinker and the spiritual realm and the spiritual path, I know right now it's trending and they make it seem so cool and high vibes and all that shit, but that's not true. That is not true. And I know we hear it now over and over again that this is the path that, for me, it's the hardest. It would be much easier to follow a path that has already been paved. And I can also accept to myself that I would be miserable, because I have tried it. And that's when I was depressed and miserable and unhappy, because I like to suffer in a different way. Let me suffer paving my own path instead of walking through somebody's, you know, like that.
Oh my God, I love that you clarify it as like it's like all of our own freedom to choose the style of suffering that we want. Because none of us get out of here alive. And we are, and the suffering, it plays a critical role in driving it all forward. Again, my humble opinion. Maybe some people are driving things forward in such a magnificent way that they've transcended all suffering.
Yeah.
But I don't. That's definitely not the majority, and in that we can rest easy knowing that we're all just uncomfortably putting one foot in front of the other, or like one foot behind the other sometimes on repeat, and that's part of the cycle as well.
Yeah, the dance. I like to call it the dance. That's part of the dance. Whatever is showing up for you, if you have the power to access your heart, it will never mislead you. And I also want to clarify that the heart is not what you feel, your emotions, your attachments, your um, trauma bonding. That is not the heart I'm speaking.
Let's be clear.
I want to.
Not the heart.
That is
And
not.
there are lots of feelings that come with that. The heart does have feelings out, but it's not pure heart.
Yeah, it's not pure heart. And if anything, if there would be one thing that I would highly encourage people to learn, would be love and kindness, metta. That meditation, learning more about how to access that heart space in order for you to develop self-compassion and empathy if you're a person that has a hard time doing that. So then you can be that, embody that, and show that for others. Yeah, because then you can stand by the dark, or in the dark, and in your power.
I remember this last year, I was really struggling again with like a mother issue. When I was on that road trip with my mom, I think I told you about this, and that profound moment that I was breaking down why I had such strong impulse to speak to her with anger and in this condescending tone, in this resentful energy, and it was all coming from this resent of like my needs not being met as a child from and and like this way of seeking to try and get my needs met was gone on for years and years. This rude and um, sharp and and resentful way of speaking to my mother, and no matter how much I tried, like I would really do my best to just think before I would speak, regulate my tone, and I did this practice of self inquiry that helped me really access that moment of why I had some belief system that I needed to use aggression to get my needs met. Like I needed to scream them.
Mm.
And obviously, this from a place where your fight or flight nervous system kicks in,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
and you're triggered,
Yeah.
especially by a parent,
Mm.
go into that state of just like reactivity,
Mm.
and from my fight or flight state, there was this belief system that the only way I'll get my needs met is if I scream and cry about it on like kind of a metaphorical level, like not to that extent, and also to some extent like screaming, crying like a fucking teenager or a toddler,
Mhm. Mhm.
as like a very grown ass woman doing this type of behavior, feeling so trapped by this reflexive response to my
Mhm.
mom, and breaking it down and coming to the understanding of like thinking there was some belief system that I needed to do that in order for it to come across, in order for me to survive, in order for me to get my needs met to survive.
Mhm.
On That's like on a very primal, primitive brain, reptile brain thinking
Mhm.
response. But then breaking it down to that level of affirming to myself all of my needs will be met if I say them with love and kindness.
Mm. Wow.
And then I like did a bunch of tapping. I did a bunch of things to kind of release the old belief system, the old belief mechanism, coping mechanism, and adopt in. And I actually I don't often do it like this. Do this type of thing where I'll then for days after. Oh, did that?
For days after.
And I was able to hold that awareness whilst continuing to be with my mom. That like every time I wanted to say something, I instead of trying to just say my thing in a nice way, instead really reframe it of how can I say this very thing that I want to say to her, but with love and kindness and trust that it that I will get my needs met in one way or another, even if it's not through her. That on some level that need will get met fulfilled.
Yeah.
And somehow it's really changed the course of my personal growth over the last year, because I kind of can see that in every fact.
I think it's important for us to make a distinction here, and I don't want to encourage people to snap or to scream, or I'm not by all means saying it's okay, yet realistically speaking, sometimes you do have to scream and yell for people to pay attention and to get the fucking hint that you're being hurt, because people don't always speak the language of love and peace. They have no capacity for it.
It's
For
so
this.
wacky. It's
What?
like it's so wacky that like I want to agree with you because it's like I want to agree with you that sometimes I've experienced very like I've experienced having an impact on a loved one when I finally lost my shit.
Yeah.
And prior to that, there was no like bargaining or reasoning.
And I also want to clarify that I am not pro violence and saying that snapping is going to make people hear you out. What I'm really wanting to express is the fact that can we really fight our programming knowing that some people know it gets serious once they feel intensity? Like, oh, now shit is really hitting the fan, or now I'm really supposed to be doing something, because that's a learning they had from childhood. So if I'm speaking to a person that knows no had no navigation of conflicts through peace, well, this person is not really going to be paying attention to me until shit actually hits the fan and I'm intense. Then he'll know or she'll know that, okay, I'm actually fucking up, or actually, this is something I need to look at, or this is really something that hurt you. So, can we really fight our programming, or can we use it um, for our own benefit in some way if we're wise, if we're savvy about it?
Well, I guess what I want to say with about that in my own experience is how I guess I've stayed in many relationships, including maintaining close relationships with family members, under this impression that, okay, if I keep using all of my same garbage skills to relate and interact and create attempt to create change in these dynamics, um I had some impression that I was making a difference, that I was creating impact, even though I was using all these maladapted mechanisms to get those needs met that came from aggression and came from blame and shame and guilt. um and these tactics did work on certain levels, but it kept us all in the same loop, as to like the same issues would resurface, and there was really and the trust and bond wasn't actually becoming stronger. It was eroding slowly because we all have such capacity to tolerate toxicity, and that's how we all identified as love amongst ourselves. And so like there would be a high tolerance for toxic interacting. But then when I was so damn sick of it, I was really taking responsibility for my own behavior and actions, and desperately seeking out alternative means of understanding, like, how do healthy people relate? um like, there's no way that, like, I just assumed, and for a long time, everybody's got to fight dirty at some point behind closed doors. And I actually, in my own healing journey, came to realize, actually, no, people who have high levels of self-respect and self-preservation have boundaries as to when something is escalating. That's actually when they cut it off and they walk away, and they know how to self-regulate, and they are actually not tolerant. They're actually intolerant of things escalating to a certain level, and they can kind of feel that in their own nervous systems, like, okay, from this point forward, nothing's going to get achieved. We're not going anywhere that's going to improve this. And so let's step away. Let's regulate ourselves, regroup, and then return from a place that we can communicate more effectively. But if you're doing that with a person, like Odette was saying, that has no ability or desire to even want to understand because they only like to fight dirty, then you have to come to some conclusion at a certain point that, okay, I'm never going to be able to actually play nice with this person. And I don't want to keep getting baited into these low level circular arguments. And instead, I want to actually surround myself with people who know how to fight fair, and who can model for me what it looks like to contain a high energy or intense problematic environment, and co-regulate with me, and have enough respect for me to know how to, like, de-escalate something, and then also say enough words that means that we can return and resolve this in a respectful way, in a way that is gonna that everyone's gonna be understood at the end of it, and not just one person being right and the other wrong.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Until you find the capacity to own your own experience and own your emotions. I also want to highlight the importance. You don't need to become a master at self-regulation or co-regulation. When you learn how to own your own experience and your emotions, and you can be in the argument or in the fight, that is healthy being conveyed here. I would say that's okay. You can be angry. You don't need to be zenned out. You can be angry. You can be sad. You can be whatever it is that you are in that moment or emotion that's coming through you. If you learn how to hold space and own your experience without spilling it on somebody else or being reactive. So emotions are welcome. Because yeah, I think that's it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, I think that that's another important point is that like the goal isn't to completely be void of emotion in order to resolve a problem, and that like when that you're there's nothing wrong with you when you're feeling all of your emotions come up. It's actually how you are able to manage them and have enough space between you and your feelings to be able to communicate to the other person without blaming them for your feelings, that you can authentically express them and say how you're feeling and what you're experiencing, but being really careful and conscientious that you're not making it their fault that you're feeling that. And that you actually are just more interested in communicating in a productive manner that gets you to understanding each other, and finding solutions together.
Yes, let everything that's happening in that argument or in that fight be a bid for connection. So it doesn't matter what you're feeling. I mean, you said it beautifully. It's it's a matter of owning your stuff and not making others or put others at fault for what you're feeling. You said it beautifully.
Well, I honestly just appreciate our conversation so much. Even this like fun way that we've patched together whatever this is, whatever it ends up being. Like this is I get so much from our interactions and our ability to just reflect and add and contribute and build upon our own biases. It just gives me a lot of life. So
Real.
thank
That's
you.
what I love about you. You're
Thank
super
you.
real, and I love that about you. I really do.